Hello, everyone. Welcome. I think we have 2 attendees, which is pretty good. Can I just do a sound check before we begin to make sure everyone can hear what I'm saying? Are you able just to go into the chat, which is on your right-hand side, and just type yes, yay, or an emoticon they've got there as well? If you can pop those in, then I know you can hear me. Brilliant. Thank you, Abby. and Nikki, I think you're there too. It's probably off having some lunch. Yeah, brilliant. We've only got you 2 so far. Hopefully we'll be joined by more, but as it is our first, this is, hopefully you'll forgive us if there's anything goes awry. So just to give you a bit of an intro as to what the IMC is, and this is our very first episode, it's basically going to be a regular monthly club, joined by guests. We've currently got Annette in the middle. Do you want to say hello, Annette? Oh, Annette's disappeared. Maybe I'll just go to Al for the moment. Al, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Al. You probably are familiar with me, but might not see me. But yeah, I work on a lot of the back-end stuff here at RI, dealing with WordPress sites, all sorts of fixes, updates, development, design. Yeah, I've got a broad range of skills and knowledge in that whole WordPress and website arena. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell, really.
And Annette, can we hear you at the moment?
No, I can't hear Annette.
Oh, never mind. Well, let me introduce Annette. Your mic seems to have dropped out for some particular reason. Do you want to just try and refresh the page, and I'll just introduce you while that happens? So Annette, I've known for quite some time. I actually met Annette through a tweet up in Hereford. A tweet up's like a group of people meeting in the evening, where you might get to know the online avatar in person. So that's quite fun. And Annette is a marketing consultant, plus also works for a company helping them with their marketing. And she's going to be helping us today talk about homepage analysis. So she's just joining back in again. So just to continue on about the club, we're hoping to be running this monthly. It's going to be a way of everyone really keeping up to date on what are the key topics in and around marketing. We're starting off with planning for the year, because I think that's a good way to start. Let's sort of review the past history and see where we're looking towards for our marketing during the year. As the people who have joined already are clients, anyone who's a client of ours is welcome to join IMC. It's completely free. It is paid for people who want to come in outside of that. So as I said today, we're looking at marketing planning. Annette, see if we can get you back in for the time being. Can you give us a shout? Maybe get in the chat room and say hello if you can see us. The joys of technology. Both Abby and Nikki will know that this is the fun we have with Skype every time we contact each other anyway. Oh, this is so weird. Okay, well, Annette, oh, you're back.
There we are.
Hey, excellent.
See if I've got a poor network.
Oh, you've got poor network. Okay, well, shall I carry on for a little bit, and then when we get to your bit, you can, I'll hand over. Hopefully your network would have cleared up by that point. So I'm basically going to go through a few things here that I found useful going through last year. And I had a blog post at the time called Ducks in a Row. And it was basically looking at the sort of things that you should be looking at when you're reviewing your marketing strategy. And one of the ones that's most interesting, and a lot of people don't do, is to look back at the previous year. Is to actually look back and see what went well, what worked well, what ideas could you incorporate back into your plan. And I thought as we go through this, I'll share a little bit of insight into how we felt last year, if I'm looking back at my what I did last year. And actually last year we probably did the same old stuff. So actually I took a little look back further to something I really enjoyed as part of doing the company. And many years ago we ran these workshops, actually quite similar to this now, but they're in person. And I really enjoyed them. I felt a lot of other clients got a lot of value out of it. And they're a mix between free and paid. And from those, not only did people enjoy them, but we got a lot of customers out of doing that. So it's something I wanted to sort of bring back into what we do. I don't know why we'd lost it. I don't know what the reason was for missing out on that and these workshops, but it's something we want to bring back in again. So really, I look back to the time when we started and we were doing these workshops, and I thought, how can we take that idea, the concept of a workshop, and bring it forward into the future, and something that we can do on a regular basis. It's not got a huge amount of cost for me or for the people attending. Plus also it's got a wide reach. And so webinar was the idea. So really IMC is born out of the idea, or this webinar is born out of the idea of looking back to what worked well for us. So this is our experiment to see if we can translate those in-person workshops into something online like this. Something else to look back on, and more specifically so, are the social and blog efforts that we went through. You know, looking back at which networks we found worked best for us, or even just making sure all our profiles are up to date. And so, in light of this, I went back through what we were doing in our blog and social profiles. And interestingly, I found that while I enjoy Twitter, I didn't really get much back from it. I didn't feel we got much engagement from Twitter. I felt it was a bit boring, really. I felt I was just pushing messages out there. But I felt LinkedIn gave us more engagement, gave us more, it seemed more fun. It seemed that actually the posts I'd put out there, people would make comments on them. They would put a thumbs up. There would be much more engagement. I'd get more out of it. But interestingly enough, I went into my Google Analytics and had a look at how many links we actually got through from all the different social media accounts. And it looked like LinkedIn was only actually 7% of all the links we got from social media. So it's actually quite a small amount. So I felt that it's giving us quite a lot, but actually in terms of the engagement and links through to our website is quite low. Whereas Twitter was about almost 60%, which is crazy. Yeah, it was really a real difference. So it actually had a feeling that it wasn't giving much traffic to the site, but actually it was giving us quite a lot in terms of the social traffic anyway. So I'm wondering, maybe I'll just put that out to Abby and Nikki. Perhaps do you have a feeling about what social media platforms have been working well for you? You have to be quick typers. LinkedIn. And why do you think that? Why do you think LinkedIn works well for you, Nikki? Seems to be the right reach. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Knowing your business, I think that LinkedIn is a very business-orientated social profile, and it seems to fit that brief neatly. But it's something that we should maybe look at when we're looking at the stats next time, is to have a look at where that traffic is coming from. If that's our goal, to get traffic from that particular social network, we should actually have a look through and see whether LinkedIn is actually giving us the traffic, even if it feels right. And Abby, you mentioned Facebook. Can you give me an example of some of the Facebook posts that might have worked well? And while you write that, I'm going to give you an example of some of the posts on our site that have worked well. So I took a look over the whole year, and Al, you'll be pleased to know that some of our podcasts came up in the blog there. So that's pretty good. But actually what topped the charts really is the interviews. So a lot of the interviews that I did, which we then blogged or put out on our blog before going on social media, they seem to be the pages that got the most traffic, either organically or via social.
I think that's because they're quite interesting and different and unusual. I mean, they've never been done before. You know, you interviewing that person has never been done before. It's brand new. Yeah. Not only do you get our sort of readership, as it were, or listenership, listening, you've also got the interviewees network as well, interested too. So you kind of bring in all of those people. So I guess if you can interview someone who's really kind of aligned with your target market in a sense, then you can kind of bring them in and just raise awareness of you and via that way. And it's just a really interesting, really interesting online content, podcast, and so forth are really sort of gathering momentum in terms of a way people are using the internet. It's not all reading.
No, I think so, and I think there were two things there. One, it wasn't just about us. So we were putting stuff out that was interesting, but not just about us. It wasn't a sales message, but also, and I think this is important, that the people that we'd interviewed were more likely to share it because it was about them.
And
so
it's quite fun, isn't it, to be interviewed and be on the. That's quite. It's got novelty to it. People are going to want to chat about it.
Yeah. So a couple of other topics. So podcasts, they were pretty big as well. In fact, the interviews, Sophie, who was on the Dragon's Den. So that's quite interesting to find out about the Dragon's Den process. And so that got a lot of traffic. And then Gina, who makes a kombucha drink. And again, I think both of those really were top because they helped with pushing through the social engagement and getting more people to click through to our interview. Also, interesting, GDPR. Any of the topics that blog posts that we put through on GDPR. And I think that's purely because it was a big topic at the time. And while there was a lot being written about it, I think there were probably fewer companies like us writing about GDPR to some degree. It's not a subject we're going to talk about all the time. It gets a bit dull, but certainly I'm fueled really to see that the interviews were top. Anyway, thank you. I can see you put a response in there, Abby. I'll just read it out. So events we do for charity and fluffy puppy and pony pictures. Do you get many fluffy ponies? I guess there are a few. So they always go down well with clients. Clinical cases are interesting, but don't seem to have the same reach unless they are shared by other practices or brands. Right. So that's quite interesting. So, and I've noticed this anecdotally, I've seen that myself. Anything which is easy to understand, cute, is a lot easier for people to like and do something with, really. So my question off the back of that is, you've got these two different ones. You've got like the fluffy puppy and the clinical cases. Which ones do you think deliver most, would give you the most benefit in terms of perhaps generating more clients? Do you think it's the fluffy puppy ones because that can get you more reach, and the more people that see Toaster Vets are the more likely they are to come to know you and join and become part of the practice? Or do you think the clinical cases, because that's something that other practices might share, so you'll get more reach that way? Maybe that's a question I'll leave with you, Abby, which you think is better. So even if you don't have time really to go through and look into the data, I think it's worth just skimming through some of the top posts and looking at which had comments, which got likes if that's relevant to the platform. Just making sure the profiles are updated, just using this as a time to go around, making sure they're all consistent, making sure everything looks right, it's all up to date. Okay, so moving on. I've just got a list here because this is just a reminder really that there are so many different social networks that people use. And it's interesting that you've got social networks like WhatsApp, which are quite enclosed, but actually it might be between a group of friends or quite a wider public group of network, but it's not public as such. And I think WhatsApp, you can get some really candid communication there through to things like Facebook or Twitter, which are much more open and reach more people. Right, you replied there, Abby. So it depends on the type of client. Indeed, cute animals always pull in the happy hacking clients. However, clinical cases mean that referral practices and people will refer their horse to a specific vet at our practice. Okay, so actually having those two different types of posts can work well for those different types of clients. You've got the much more business orientated ones, or the individual who's just got a horse themselves. Right, okay, that makes sense. And it's good to recognize that's having two different audiences, which we'll come on to later. Okay, so ad campaigns. I'm not going to spend too long on this. We don't generally want to run ad campaign. We don't generally run ad campaigns that much. We experiment really, but that's just so we keep our hand in on the actual platform so we can advise our clients. But the key things with any ad are to make sure that you are getting the return you expect, because you're having to pay money for these. This is actually something which is costing you money every time people click, or every time they view a video, it's costing you money. So it's really important that you understand what your objective is and that you're getting some value from that, whether it's a sale or a contact. And I find a lot of people don't know how they measure that. They really don't, or are not sure what they're measuring and what, that they know they're getting the best value from that. Just going back to Abby here. Andy. So I know Andy. He is one of the partners at ToasterVet. He wants to push orthopedic cases at the moment to get practice known for this. Okay, so in that case, I guess pushing these more specific cases is a way of becoming, helping the practice become niched in a certain area. And so you'll get more referrals based on that particular niche, which is great. I think if you can find a niche that works for you, that can work in your favor. So yeah, reviewing ad campaigns. And you can look at ad campaigns as either something like Google online ads or Facebook ads, or even perhaps like a printed ad or something like that, where you're going to a magazine, or maybe even something like Yell. It's to work out what that objective is, what you're actually trying to achieve with that particular ad. And then working back from there and understanding what money's going into it. And I've got an example. Got a question from Claire here. So that's quite a good question. How do you know how much you should spend on a campaign? Very good question, Claire. So this slide may help that a little bit. I think sometimes it's difficult to know initially. So I think when you're starting any campaign, you want to put in a certain amount of money that you can risk, that you can lose. You don't want to bank everything on your advert. So I think start small and start with something quite targeted in terms of an advert. But once you have run the campaign, and this is the data I'm showing on screen is like an example of a Google Ads campaign. Once you've run your campaign for a little while, you'll start to understand what how many clicks you're getting through to your website, and then how many of those clicks are actually converting into a sale or a conversation of some sort, or a click through to your contact page. And each of those you can determine as a conversion. They've done something you want them to do. Once you know what your conversions are, and you know how much you're putting in, how many clicks are coming through, and you know how much cost you're putting in there, you can get this cost per conversion. And the great thing about knowing your cost per conversion is that you can then use that as your budget. And you can then say, well, if I spend £10 and I get one customer from that, then hopefully if I double that to say £20, I'm going to get 2 customers from that. And you should be able to scale that. That will change. It will depend, because maybe with Google, and depending on your topic or your category that you're in, you might start reaching the upper end, and you're sort of almost scraping the barrel in terms of the customers that you're reaching with your ad. So the conversion rate or cost per conversion might actually go up. But I would start with a figure that you think is manageable and then work from there. So the example we've got here is, if we're working from left to right, we've got 4 million impressions. And I think this is shown over the course of a year. So 4 million impressions. So it's shown 4 million times over the course of the year. It's got a click-through rate of 0.2%, which is quite low. So that's, this is good because at least we're measuring it. So we've got something we can work to. So click-through rate means that someone has seen that impression, they've clicked through to the website. So it's the difference or the ratio between the impression and the click. We've got 9,000 clicks, and then we've got 185 conversions. So out of that, they have filled out a form that gives them, that triggers a goal on Google Analytics, and that gives us a conversion rate. And once we have all that information, you can see on the far left, we've got this cost per conversion. Once we know that, we can then start scaling it up as long as we're getting the conversions coming through. I hope that makes sense, but I won't dwell on it too much. I think advertising and ad spend is a really interesting area. And if you want, we'll talk about topics that we can cover in future IMC events. And maybe this is one of them you want to cover. So thanks, Claire. Okay. So really that's all about looking back at overall in terms of what you've been doing, social and your ad plan. Now we're looking forward. So looking and reviewing your marketing plan. And really, these are the key areas. There's lots of different things you can look at, but these are the key areas you might be looking at for 2019. So you've got your vision or objectives, as I call it, which is a bit more straightforward. It's what you want to achieve, not necessarily just in marketing, but in the business. What do you want to do? Your mission, so that's maybe quantifying it a little bit. That's putting some numbers to some of those objectives. Your strategy, that's how you get there. So they're the things you are going to do to achieve those numbers, to achieve those objectives. And then also thinking about the audience and your competitors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through each of those, just looking back at our particular objectives for each of these. So with vision objectives, you could look at it in different ways. Like if it's a more high level vision, it could be how you want to be thought of, how you want your company to be perceived. You can look at your long-term objectives, so over 5, 10 years, your blue sky visions. Or like me, you can keep it to more practical things like I want to launch a new product or I want more family time. And so looking at something that I personally want, or as a challenge, an objective really, is it'd be really nice to finish the main day job at 3 p.m. That's my target, because I find that after 3 p.m. I become less productive. It's not that I can't do anything else. It's just that I feel I've put a lot of energy into the job already. And actually after that time, I'm better off switching to another job. I'm better off switching to something else. That could be developing new products. It could be doing more social events and things like that. But actually, in terms of the main job, I think we've finished. So my main objective there is to finish at 3 p.m. Al, Annette, maybe I'll open up to you. Do you have any objectives for the coming year? Sort of general overview thing that you'd like to do?
So yeah, I approach the new year with where do I want to be this year, and then break it down into smaller chunks. So typically a couple of months at a time, and then really detailed planning what I do every day, of a weekday, and breaking that down into tasks. So yeah, I'm definitely a really big picture, and then draw it down to actionable points from there.
So would you mind sharing one of your high-level things you'd like to do?
Promoting my courses at the moment. That's probably my focus at the moment. I've got to keep freelance work ticking over in the sidelines, but I also record and publish courses. So it's the big level is to drive more traffic to those courses.
Good. Okay. And Al, what about you?
Well, I'm nowhere near that organised or visionary at all. I guess I'm a good example of the sort of person that sort of lives week to week. So I don't have any long-term visions. I've got some ideas, but yeah, I'm one of those people who has lots of ideas, but then another idea comes in and takes its place. So that's what I'm like. And so constantly new ideas, but never get the old ones completed.
Yeah, that's what I'm like with DIY. Get too excited. Yeah, so sometimes having a plan like this can help, because it doesn't mean you can't change it, but sometimes writing things down and sharing them with other people and talking about them can actually help move things forward or rationalize whether it's the right idea to go forward with altogether.
Certainly telling people about things makes you do it more, makes you more likely to do it, because you're accountable. You'll feel like they'll check in with you and you don't want to sound like you've sort of failed at it or not done it, unless there's a really good reason. It's a bit like we work with a client where they work with people who do kind of big challenges, and they say one of the things, a key thing, is to tell people about it. Otherwise, you can just back out of it. But once that's done and it's kind of out there, even just to a couple of people, you're more likely to get it done. It's quite self-motivating.
Now, I agree with that, but I've heard counter evidence. Maybe evidence is a strong word, but I've had counter information where people feel that actually, once the moment you tell people, that's when you get your buzz of having done it. And so some people find that the moment they say, "Oh, I'm going to do this," and people go, "Oh, that's really great. That sounds amazing. Tell me more about it." You're getting the buzz of having done it, and then some people don't go on to do it. So it can almost work against some people. That actually gives them that buzz before they've sort of satisfied it.
Yeah. It does depend on your character, I think.
Yeah, I think it does.
Personality type, maybe.
Yeah, hands up in the chat room if that's the same for everyone.
Yeah, are you a planner or are you a doer?
Yeah, exactly. So coming on to the mission, so I think a lot of people get confused by some of these terms as well, like vision and mission and what they actually mean. But this is just coming down to the numbers. It's really, so once you have an idea of what you want to achieve, well, actually, how are you going to achieve that? What numbers do you need to put in place, or what numbers would you like to achieve? So one of the numbers we'd like to do is we've got this new application called Say Hola, which is a review and ratings application. Nikki loves a plan, she says. Excellent. I do too. So we've got this Say Hola application. And I would like to get, because it's quite new and we're sort of pushing out to clients and it's sort of in its testing phase, although it's still, you know, active and live. But I think really this year I'd like to get 10 subscriptions on a monthly basis. Now, it's not many. It's not a grand big goal. It's not what they call a hairy goal, a big hairy goal, which is I think really weird phrase. It's something I think is quite achievable. It's something I think we can do. We can get 10. We'll probably hopefully overachieve that, but I think it's quite realistic to aim for. So that's our mission really, is to get 10 Say Hola subscriptions within this year. So moving on, audience. So I think any marketing plan, you might need to revise your audience. Now, often you might do this as a separate activity to your marketing plan in terms of knowing who your audience are, but it's a good opportunity to come back to it. And really, there are lots of different questions you can ask, but essentially, I think when you understand your audience, you want to answer the question, what are their problems and how can you help them? What it is that you do that actually brings value to your audience. So I'm gonna, and you can take a moment to think about this, but I'm gonna turn that over to the guys in the chat room. What is it about, what pains and problems do you have in marketing that someone like rather Inventive or Impact any person can solve? You know, what are the issues you have and what help do you need, which is something we can focus on for this coming year. So hopefully this is my market research going out and done now. So I'll give you a moment to think about that while we move on to the competition side of things as well. Okay, so Abby has responded with hopefully a lovely new website. So do I, Abby. We've been pushing for that for a couple of years. I think so, and actually that's something that is a pain for you in terms of marketing, because it's not allowing you to go out in the same way, you know, go out to market how you want. There's just fundamental differences in how the current website is split up and segregated that this new website or websites would solve. So actually that's quite important to have that, because it's really something that's a cornerstone to everything that you're doing. And Nikki Ayres loves it. Right, so Nikki from Eclipse, hope you don't mind. I know the companies you work for, obviously, so I'm going to mention them. So Nikki from Eclipse, the CCTV company, yeah, we've just produced a new website for them, and despite some teething snags, as you would have with any large project, it's so much nicer and so much better. And I'm hoping that it gets over some of those marketing pains that we've had before, some of those issues and sort of problems really with, it's not even necessarily the website, but just the way it was constructed, the small font size, the shop, everything just wasn't modern enough, and it didn't feel that we wanted to push it out there. More ad campaigns, yes, that's something I think that would be good too. Okay, we'll move on from that. So competitors, I won't touch on too much, but just from our point of view, I think I don't worry too much about what competitors are doing. I don't think it's hugely important, but it is worth just looking occasionally and seeing if they're doing something interesting, something different, or potentially something that could threaten your business. But it's not worth dwelling on that too much. And in our case, I feel that some of the competitors to elements of what we do, because not all competitors touch on what we do, except very large companies who they're not necessarily competitors. I think some of them have just a clearer offering. They are more niche. So maybe, for example, they just focus on social media, or they just focus on a different aspect like SEO or AdWords or Google Analytics. So I think some of the problems we've got are that we can cover so many different areas that can be difficult for people to see exactly what we do. And so really, I think part of what I want to do this year, and I've already started revising things, is to reflow and restructure the website so it gives a much clearer offering about what we present. But I think it's always worth looking at competitors. You know, there may be some ideas in there. There may be some, certainly if they're higher up than you in search optimization, and they come up on a higher search engine ranking position. It's worth looking at what they're doing right. You know, are they including something on their site that you need to include? So it's definitely worth looking, but don't get paralyzed by it. So Claire's got a question here about help drilling down into stats and working out where we should be focusing on marketing. Okay, so that's one of the key marketing issues that you've got. I think I think statistics can be quite paralyzing for people because there's so much of it. I mean, you take a short walk into Google Analytics and you're blown away. Even I find it quite overwhelming. There's a lot going on, and it's difficult to know what to look at, what to focus on. So actually having some key numbers that you can look at is really, really useful. Okay, so that's good to know. Thank you, Claire. Al, did you have something to say on that?
No, I was just nodding. I was just thinking of that old phrase, which is, I can't remember who said it, but it was saying, they know that 80% of the marketing doesn't work, but it doesn't you don't know which 80%. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's always been a case of not always being able to tell what. Yeah, you're going to have to do a lot of marketing, and yes, you'll always get some feedback, but it's some customers out of it, but it's which bit is working. Although on the internet, you do have, like you say, you do have more statistics. You do have more tools available to work out the mechanics of where people are coming from and what they're interested in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is where it comes back to the objectives. You don't want to get paralyzed by analyzing lots of data and looking at lots of numbers. It can get overwhelming. And sometimes you get to a point, you're looking at these numbers and you just have no clue what's going on anymore because they're changing all the time, or you're looking at the wrong things. It's much easier to say, these are the things that are important to me. These are the things that drive sales, or they drive whatever other objective you want on the site. And I will just look at those. I'll only then dive into other numbers when it becomes a problem. So, I mean, that could be good. That could be a good topic perhaps for another IMC, where we look at Google Analytics and we look at what are the key important data points to put out there.
Yes,
Annette, do you have any thoughts on
analytics
that?
needs to be just taken as almost a trend sometimes. I think you can't absolutely depend on them.
Mm-hmm.
They are a snapshot. They are sometimes not truthful. Sometimes they're a bit skewed. Sometimes they have only part of the information that you need. So I think they're useful in terms of a trend. Is this something that we need to be doing more of, or is this something that we need to be doing less of? And what are our audience most interested in on our site? And that kind of thing. But don't get, like you said, don't get tied up by them. Don't go, oh, this is an exact figure and we have to do a particular thing because statistics tell us this. And I think you need to trust your gut as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I know in the past I've been guilty of trying to measure too much as well, and you just get overwhelmed by it. Certainly with goals, actually, Google Analytics goals, so you can track whether people visit a certain page. And I've been guilty of setting so many goals that actually it makes it difficult to know what was valuable. And so actually part of what we were doing last year is paring back some of those goals so we actually get some valuable information. Okay, great. So moving on, looking ahead. So I think, I mean, all of this is looking ahead, but really this is looking ahead and outside of your company, really, and where you want to go. And I guess this returns back to what we found interesting, is that I really liked running events. I think events worked well. They fit in nicely with our company and they fit in nicely with our audience. So actually, I've been reaching out and working with a couple of companies. One is the Unicorn co-working space. So they're in Cirencester, and also actually HSBC in Swindon. So I have worked with Unicorn. Actually, we did one last week. We did just a course on reviews and how to get better reviews and structured data. So it's just a very small course for people who attend that co-working space. It's a small, nice group. And I'm organizing one with HSBC to go and do something similar. So it's going to be a group of, say, 15, 20 people. And it's about coming back to getting in front of people, sharing information, getting feedback, because they really work as well as a lead generator for us. I don't want everyone I meet to then become a new client. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes it's going to take time for them to warm up. Sometimes they're not interested. They just want to go in, get the information, and come back out again. No problem, and I'm happy for that. But what we've done in the past is we've tried to do this ourselves, and I know how hard it is to set up and run workshops, physical workshops. You've got to organize the space. You've got to make sure it's available. You've got to keep hounding people until they come. You've got to pay for it. That may cost quite a bit of money. There's a lot of stress if you don't get enough people. And so actually working with other businesses on this, how we can get involved with them, whether they've got actually an event that is fixed and we can attend that event and put something on there, such as I'm going to be looking into Bath Digital. So we're going to speak to them and see if there's an event we can put on at their event that's already happening, or something where we can put on an event in conjunction with another company, like I'm doing with Unicorn and HSBC. I know that sort of thing has worked in the past, but it's taking the pressure off. And also partnering with the other people, we get the benefit of their reach and their audience and them advertising other people. So that all ties in nicely, I think, really, in terms of looking ahead. But same for you guys. I mean, if you want to look ahead and look at what events that you can be involved in, whether it's, for example, like with Toast the Vets, what events are happening already that you can be involved in and you can attend, or what events can you create in partnership with someone else? And I know you do a lot of that already, but events seem to work quite well generally for a lot of people. And in fact, partnering with businesses who have the same audience and maybe aren't competing in any way at all, that can be really beneficial. So I think just looking ahead and seeing what's out there, seeing what's available, something you can get involved in, even if it's just visiting, something you can be part of. I know that in our diary we've got lined up for, is it WXG? I'm saying that right? So it's
in May.
It's basically a sort of web conference in Guildford run by another company. And from that, we get some material out of that, but we get to go, we get to learn, and hopefully, we'll see how it works. We may be able to do our podcast from that, I don't know. But it's just looking ahead and seeing what we can get involved in. So Nick has got something here. We started a quarterly local business networking meeting and have opened it up this year for individual companies to host, spreading the cost. Nice. And how's that working well? So you've obviously wanted to expand it. Can you go into a little bit more about how that's working for you and what you particularly are getting out of it? It's working really well. Good. I like how you've quantified that then. I think it's important for certainly events, if nothing else, if it's fun and people enjoy themselves and they return and you can get contacts out of it, even if you don't get leads, it will spread your reach. You are more likely to get referrals in doing that sort of thing. So I'm glad you're on that too. Okay, so we'll move on to the website stuff. So before I hand over to Annette, who's going to go through a little bit about spending time on your website and really reviewing it, I've just got a couple of points here which are worth looking at. Abby, this is probably relevant to redeveloping the website. But the key things are, is it easy for visitors when they approach the site to find out what it is you do? When they land on a page, are they sure that's the right page for them? Are they sure it's worth their while reading on? Is it clear what they've got to do? Is it clear how they can buy from you? If there's a product that they want, they've come through to the right page and there is a button for them to buy it, or there's further information there, or a video if they need more information. What is it they want when they come to that page? You've really got to think about what questions are in that visitor's head. Do you have reviews on your site? So maybe this is a purchase where people aren't sure whether they want it or not. So putting reviews on there can really help. It can give that social trust and clarity that other people are buying that too. Obviously, they've got to be real reviews, but collecting those with something like just sending out emails or using our system like Sayhola to collect those reviews can be really useful. And then this is a very technical issue, but adding structured data. So this is something we've been speaking to with our SEO consultant, Chris, who I'm hoping to get on one of these clubs too, in terms of getting this structured data on your website. Now, this is hidden data that goes underneath the website next to relevant information, such as your address or organization details, or in this particular case, reviews. So when Google crawls your site, it can see what the review title is, what the review description is, what the star rating, and maybe who the review author is. And it's helping to give that information specific context. Again, I'll if anyone is interested, perhaps I can share, put your hands up, and I can share the review, how to get reviews and structured data workshop I did at Unicorn the other day, because that has further information on that. Before we move on to the website, I see Nick has just added some other information here. So this is going back to the local business event that they had. So the reason we started it was you really don't know who is on your doorstep, and this way you get to meet our neighbours and their businesses, which is totally true. I mean, you're on a big sort of industrial estate, a business estate, and I think it's really nice that you can bring everyone together and hopefully do a business, of course. Yeah, so Abby says she is interested, and I know I've already sent you a copy. So while Annette's talking, when we finish, I'll perhaps upload that for everyone, and you can have a look at it too. Okay, so Annette, I'm going to hand over to you, and you're going to talk about really usability and design reviews.
Hopefully, hopefully my internet connection will last for long enough for me to do this. Sorry about earlier. Well, yeah, what I wanted to say was my usability report is usually split into two different sections. The first section is this design review that we're looking at now, but it's more about the whole user experience. So it's about what the design's like. Is it up to date? Do you want to be up to date, or are you quite a traditional company and you want something, something along those lines? What your branding's like, what the user journey is like. So Ben's already touched on this. How easy is it for me to see what you do as a business, and can I find the information that I want? Visual content, which I'll touch on a bit later, and mobile. And then the second half of it is more about the user interface. So it's about what content is on a page, how it's laid out, how easy it is to find, how the menu works, and the sort of categorization of products and product categories and subcategories, forms, and obviously the speed of the website, how fast it is to load, that kind of thing. These are kind of really top level bullet points that I've just written down. Every report that I do is different, because you arrive at a site, especially as I do as a completely new user, having sometimes never known the business before or what they do. And sometimes it's very obvious that there's a section of the website that needs more detail than another. So sometimes the report focuses on a particular area of the website where there's a lot to do there. And sometimes it's more of a broad brush sort of report where there's bits and pieces to pick up all over the site. Sorry, you'll have to excuse me. I'm full of cold, so I'm a bit tricky.
I think we all are.
Okay, so yeah, every report is different, and it all depends on what the site was like when I first arrived there. Today I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail about homepage layouts and images, and I'm going to use Siemens as an example, which just doesn't mean to say that I think that Siemens has done a really bad job of building their website. It just so happens that there were lots of things that I could spot straight away that I think are relevant, and even if you don't get a report done, there might be some tips within these that you'll be able to apply to your own website. So I'm going to look at those two, and I've brought up some screenshots. I'm just going to reduce the video and make that a little bit bigger for me. So yeah, basically the first thing I wanted to say touches again on what Ben said. So when I arrive at this website, is it obvious to me straight away what this business does? And I don't think that Siemens do a very good job of this. They have the top half of their page is all blog posts of very varied content, and you actually have to scroll down the page in order to get to their key product areas, which is a problem if you've got a really small screen like mine, which you can see. I'm only just starting to see the top of their product information at the top of that desktop page. And another thing is, if you want to try and use the menu to get to a product on the Siemens site, it's just huge because of the variety of their products and services. They have this absolutely huge website, and so the menu, they've gone down the route of a drop-down menu, and if you open the menu, it's a grey screen. You get faced with a grey screen with text links on it, and you can't see anything else on the page. So there's no clue to the individual user who's arrived on the site like I did that you've got to a page underneath, or that the page is changing underneath the menu. All you can see on my screen is a grey square and the links. And you've probably got 5 or 6 links before you get to a product page. So the whole time you're drilling down page and a subpage and a subpage and a subpage. And you're thinking, am I in the right section? Am I going to have to try and find my way back to where I was in case I'm not in the right section? And so there's an anxiety caused by that. And actually, usability testing is a lot about reducing that friction for the user and making the website appear to be easy to use, no matter how big the product range is. Because if people find it hard, they'll leave and they'll go somewhere else where it's easier or feels easier. So, yeah, that is one thing. I think Siemens have got a very prominent search, which you might just be able to see in the top right-hand corner of both of those screenshots. And they've made it prominent on both the desktop and on the mobile version, purely because, as far as I'm concerned, it's so hard to find your way around the site. I would bet that a lot of their users have to resort to the search box in order to find what they want to get to. And so, yeah, that was one thing I picked up. The other thing is that when you go into the mobile version, the contact details, again, Ben touched on this, how easy is it for them to get in touch with you? Can they find your phone number or your email address straight away? In the desktop version, you've got a link in the top right-hand corner again, and in the footer, in the bottom right-hand corner, which are pretty obvious places to go looking for a telephone number or an email address. That's fine. But on the mobile site, the contact details don't even exist in the footer at all. Really, yeah.
Really?
And to find them in the menu, you have to open the burger menu, then you have to find about the company, then you have to find about Siemens, then you have to find the contact page link. Or, conversely, if you click the search box, you get a link to the contact page. Again, I would guess has come about because so many of the users resort to the search box because they can't find what they're looking for. And yeah, and so, you know, company contact information is just absolutely paramount. If that is one of your call to actions, if you want people to get in touch with you, you've absolutely got to make that clear. Okay, staying on the mobile version, I think you can pretty much see this quite nicely from the screenshots. When you're on the desktop version, you've got this lovely orange button, which is call to action on that slider image. And so that's great. You can see that straight away. You know you want to click it if you want to read that article. Great. If you're on the mobile version, that orange button goes below the image, below the headline, below the text, and below that is your orange button, which you can't see straight away, so you've got to scroll down to it. Now, if you've got fat fingers like I've got, what you do is you put your finger on the screen and you start to scroll, and if you hesitate for even a second, you end up with clicking into that article. So you can't get to the call to action, which is fine if you want to read that article, but you also can't get to that list that I talked about just now of products and services that Siemens offer. Bearing in mind, these are not product offering. The top banner is not product offering, it's blog articles. So if you want to get to a service that Siemens provides, you've got to try and get below that picture on the mobile, and you might not be able to get there because the picture is full width, the title is pretty much full width, the text is actually linked, and then you've got this button that you've got to get past in order to get to the information that you're looking for a bit further on down the page. So yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. They had
I wasn't sure about the text either. When I saw it, I thought, oh, do Siemens do actual printing now, like printing on paper? I didn't think 3D printing until I read it, and there's the tiny subtitle, new 3D printing facility in Worcester.
Exactly, so I think that's deceptive for a start. The other thing is they've put the wrong link in. So actually, if you click the title of that blog article, you end up on a blog post about Goodwood Speed Festival. If you click the image or the call to action button, it actually goes to the right article. But someone somewhere in the land has forgotten to link the post title, which is pretty odd because usually they link directly to the article.
There's also, I noticed on, let me see if I can show it here, on the mobile version, you get affronted by the cookie notice, which takes up more than half of the page before you get there.
Exactly, and that kind of pop-up is if you know what I mean, if it appears immediately. I know you need to get people's permission about cookies, but if it appears immediately, it's really not very good for SEO. So
no, and you're right. It goes to the wrong place. It goes to the Goodwood Vessel of Speed, which is, you know, and that's what appears first on their
taking up
page for
prime real
Siemens,
estate.
huge company.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to stick with that carousel image, and I'm going to sort of move away from layout and into more of the image side of things. You know, those carousel images at the top of the page are really popular with business owners, predominantly because you can get 4 or 5 items of interest into the top of the page in one go, instead of having to focus on one particular message. And then also very much, you know, designers are a fan of them as well. Sorry, Al. But they're not great from a user perspective. And there's 2 reasons for that. The first is that they're often quite difficult to use, particularly when you get onto our mobile site. If there's, and in this case, Siemens have got those little radial buttons at the bottom so that you can click through them and get back to the one that you were looking at. So if the third one, for example, is the one that you're interested in, you can actually get back to that on the Siemens site. But a lot of those carousels don't have that kind of functionality, and you're faced with trying to work out how you can get back to that article, or have to sort of wait for it to come around again. So that's one thing. They're not very nice from that point of view for a user. Second thing is that they are almost considered ads. Anything animated, moving, you know, that goes to the top of the screen is regarded by an ad in a user's mind. So Siemens, interestingly, have done a whole batch of user testing, which is one of the reasons I picked up on their website. And they hired a company called Nielsen Norman Group to do their user testing for them. And one of the exercises that they did was they put a special offer into that banner at the top of their page. And it was for a washing machine. So they put a big picture of a washing machine. And then they put in big text, £100 off your washing machine. 94-point text, I think it was. So it's probably 6 or 7 times the size of text on the rest of the page. And then they sat a batch of users down in front of it and said, please, can you find out what offers we have on at the moment? And all of the users couldn't see that washing machine special offer, which is the first banner in a carousel at the top of the page with shouty text on it and a picture of a washing machine. And they were amazed, but it's because users suffer from banner blindness. You know, in every search engine result, on every magazine website that you go on, there's these banner ads that are flickering in the corner of your eye, and you learn to ignore them. And that's exactly what all of these users have done. So it isn't working for them in the way that they anticipated it was going to, which I thought was really interesting. And
they haven't changed it
yes, funnily enough. The other thing is that sort of design slot can be quite difficult to work with in terms of images. So in this example, it's not too bad a ratio for the width to the depth of the image, but quite often those slots are quite narrow so that you can see the content that's underneath them, because you don't want it to take up the whole of the page to the fold. You want to give people a clue that there's something underneath that image so that they start scrolling down to it. But that shape, that sort of landscape, very narrow shape, is actually quite difficult to find images that sit in that shape and keep their context. And added to that now, you have the mobile responsibility. So, you know, it's got to work at a desktop size and at an iPad or a tablet size and at a mobile size. So yeah, you quite often get pictures that have been cropped because of that position, and they no longer make sense. And here, Siemens, I think, have done a very good job. So even when the images are resized for mobile, they do still make sense. They've carefully chosen images that are going to work in both of those spaces. And they have actually done quite a good job here, but it is something that lots of websites that I review have that problem. I think it's one of the Nielsen Norman directors, he has this saying, which I love, which is, fashion should never trump usability. And I think that's that's a
Mhm.
very common thing. You design to the latest in the web design world, but sometimes it's not very user friendly.
I think you're right on these sliders, Annette, that certainly the people we speak to, a lot of clients find them interesting and nice and pretty looking, to see them going, and that's something they go, oh, I want one of those, or they like sites which have it. But that's because you're looking at sites that you like the look of. Whereas if you are looking at it from a user's point of view, I think, Abby, we were talking about this recently, that we need to get that information from a user's objective, or from just someone who can be objective, like you, Annette, someone who is separate, who doesn't have skin in the game, so to speak, and can look at it from a user's point of view, and give you that feedback on what is appropriate. Because a lot of people actually just want to get to information, they want to get there quickly. It's very rare people will spend time on a website looking at how pretty it is, how nice it looks, and actually they're more frustrated by the image just disappears off the screen, and they don't know they can click on the dot to go back to it, and they have to wait, and they're frustrated.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a key point.
So yeah, the final point I want to make is obviously resolution, needing to make sure that all of the images that you upload are web resolution, particularly in a carousel like this, because if you're uploading 5 images and you put them up at print resolution and they're a couple of meg each, that really slows your page load down. I know that there are ways to develop the loading so that they are quicker and they load one at a time, and that sort of thing. But yes, if your page is really slow to load, then people are just going to get bored and they're going to leave before the page even appears in front of them. If they're anything like me, they'll open 10 tabs at once. So they'll do a search, open 10 tabs, and the page that's quickest is probably going to get my attention first. And if something takes any length of time to load, I will close it and carry on, because there's alternatives, basically. So, yeah, again, Nielsen Norman, they have this lovely paragraph that I think it's super. And it basically says, if your website's slow, users will leave. If they can't find what they're looking for, users will leave. If they can't read the text, users will leave. If it's not relevant to them, users will leave. And have you noticed a pattern, kind of thing? And I think that's what my user testing is all about. It's, is this engaging? Can I figure out what you're doing? Is it of interest to me? And then can I actually get in touch with you at the end of it? So yeah, that's basically it, I think.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, that's some really good points there, Annette. Do you want to just talk to us, because you're one of our Inventive people on our website, and so you were able to actually do these for people on their websites to give an objective viewpoint. And actually, I don't know if you remember, Nikki, we worked with Annette on this before we got your website developed. So we actually got Annette to look through your previous website, basically do effectively what this usability report to help point out some of the areas that we felt needed changing as well. So you helped our argument there, Annette. Do you want to just very briefly talk, because I understand we're coming up to the hour, very briefly just talk through the web usability report?
Do you think this is a good time of year to be talking about it? Because I think if you have plans to develop a new website this year, Abby, it's a good idea to have the usability report done before you do that redevelopment. Now that sounds odd, because you would think, oh, I'm getting rid of that website, what's the point? But there is a user learning curve when you move from an old website to a new website. There's a user learning curve and having to learn the new website when they arrive. And you don't really want to throw away the baby with the bathwater. So you kind of want to review your existing site, find out what's working on it, find out what's not working on it, and then take that forwards and keep the bits that are working for you already. And then obviously the two things that I think that come out of the report and of the changes that follow on from that is you increase your conversion. So people can find a call to action and they can figure out what you do, and then they can buy, or they can sign up, or they can find contact details to call you. You're going to increase your conversion rate. And obviously the other thing is improves your brand perception. So if they're on a website, it looks professional, they can find the information that they need, they immediately have this knock-on feeling that you are a professional company you can provide the products and services that they're looking for, and you're going to deliver when you say you're going to deliver. There's this, you know, it's a knock-on effect of having a site that works for people, I think. And obviously, why me? Well, objective, I probably don't know your site, I probably don't know your business, so I'm going to have very much an external, you know, I'm not invested in any of the design or the technology that you've already got in place. So I unfortunately make no bones about things that I think are not working. And also, you know, I've got 20 years of experience. I've been developing websites and publishing websites for over 20 years, from tiny little micro businesses right up to international and, you know, multi-international businesses. So I've done quite a lot of user testing in my time, and I have quite a lot of that sort of knowledge tucked under my belt, and that you might miss if you review your site yourself.
Well, there's a question here from Abby, which may link into that, about creating a usability report for our client forum. So they've actually got client forums for their company. They've got 3 departments. You've got the horsey equine department. You've got the small animal, sort of from rabbits up to Labradors, and then you've got farm. And actually, they've got client forums for equine, but they're looking at developing for the others. And one of the things I spoke to them about last time is about developing, you know, asking some of their customers to do some of this information. And that may be something we could put together, I don't know, small report or something, just to give them. So customers can do some of that usability report, and I think they can. I think they certainly can do an aspect of that. But sometimes it's good to have a more considered, objective opinion who's willing to go through and maybe say things that customers aren't, because sometimes customers are far too nice, and then they're not going to tell you when something isn't working.
Exactly, I've done both. So I have set up usability testing where I've taken a batch of customers, put them in a room, given them a series of tasks that they need to perform on the website, and actually had someone sit beside them and go through that process. And that could be amazingly valuable, because obviously everybody uses the web in a different way. So that can bring up all sorts of items. They're obviously the target audience, so you know whether it's going to appeal to them. But as you've just touched on, they often say what they think you want to hear rather than what's actually the truth, because they don't want to offend, and they need some structure in terms of, we would like you to find the special offer on the senior site, and otherwise they sort of wander off, and what you'll get is a series of opinions about, well, we think you should change the colour to blue, which has got nothing to do with your marketing objectives.
Exactly.
So they need a bit of steering. I think you need to know that they're not necessarily going to be blunt when things really need to change. And obviously there's a lot of technical knowledge that I just carry around in me from years of doing this, that I could probably add to the equation if
I think it's part of the mix, isn't it? I mean, it's good to get opinions from different people, so you can make it your own mind. I know we're running along, but I don't know if you remember the Homer Simpson, who the car manufacturer came to him and said, look, we want your everyman, to design a car for every man. And so the car he designed, with all their feedback, was the most horrible looking, obscure, weird car with cup holders everywhere for his beer and this, that, and the other. And it worked for him, perfect car for him, but not actually for most people. And you'll get that from a lot of people who say, this is what I want particularly. So you can't just take one person's word for it from like a customer. Anyway, you can't just take their word for it, because they're just invested in them. You've got to get a variety, but you can still have someone who is much more objective and will give you a much more general, considered opinion on a website. We must move on as we're running along, and I was intending to stick to an hour for this particular one. Thanks very much, Annette. Basically, if you would, you can get Annette via our Inventive people. In fact, I might even be able to deliver a little link into the chat room like that. I think, yeah, wow, that works. So maybe this is something to consider, actually, Abby, as part of the mix of the SEO report we're already getting done, which is a real deep dive into some of the issues on the website now, plus also getting the client forum, and then getting another sort of external professional opinion, because while we know the site very well, Al knows it particularly well, it's good actually to get someone who has no idea, never seen the site before, can give you a real objective opinion. Anyway, I'll leave that there. So thanks very much for that, Annette. That's really good, actually. Some good insight onto Siemens there. So I'm happy to stick around if people want a Q&A, but if you need to leave, because I did say it'd be an hour, then you'll feel free to do so. But before you do, I just wanted to go on to get a feel for how you felt the club went today, and what sort of topics you'd like to look at next time, and what you'd like to look at. Now, bearing in mind the club, so all of our coaching clients, you're automatically enrolled into the next club, which will be happening at the last Thursday of the month at the same time, 1 o'clock. But I would like to know what sort of topics we'd like covered next time. So we've got an idea for looking at reviews, being more in depth on that, running email campaigns, perhaps, image editing, something else, structured data. Perhaps you could put in the chat room any particular areas that are bugging you right now, or areas that you'd like to focus on a bit more.
Statistics that you talked about earlier. So that.
Oh yeah, so like Google Analytics, diving into a bit of that. Yeah, so it could be quite good to sort of have almost a free-form dive into Google Analytics. What's Abby put here? Email campaign and how often we should do this. Yeah, I think that could be quite interesting, because I think a lot of people do use email. And may or may not use it effectively, but there's lots of different ways you can use it. You can have like a monthly newsletter, or you can have more structured marketing automation campaigns. So, okay. Any other votes, Nikki? Do you have an idea about what would be useful to talk about next time? Looks like we'll go for email campaign then. I think that should be quite good for you, Nikki, because there's probably a lot you can do there, and a lot you can use email marketing for. Also in relation to GDPR, oh, don't get me started on that topic. Okay, email campaigns it is, right, +1s all round. So what was the next one there? Okay, so basically, so what's going to happen is this is all new to us. We're using this new system called Demio for these webinars. Hopefully what should happen is everyone who's enrolled on this will roll on to the next session, which, as I said, is on the last Thursday of each month. And we'll be talking about email campaigns. Hopefully it'll just work. It'll just start notifying you when that happens. If it doesn't, don't worry, I'll be in touch to get everything sorted. But if you've got to go, please run along. Don't worry. If you want a copy of the video, I'll make sure that gets emailed out to you, hopefully by tomorrow. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thanks very much, Nikki, for saying that. Do appreciate it. Got some good notes. You clapped. Lovely. Okay. Right, if anyone's staying around, I'm going to hang around for another 5 minutes or so. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, thanks, Annette. That's really good. Lovely. And thank you, Al, for being there. I think Claire was also hiding in the background as well. Right, looks like everyone, there's no more questions. So I'm going to say thank you very much, and goodbye. And yeah, see you later, Nikki. All right, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.